All right, good morning, Lakewood. Good morning. Sorry for the little bit of a delay. We had a Windows update on the computer system, so it kind of messed everything up back there in the tech room. So we are going to be covering the flood today. So skeptics and Bible science defenders share an assumption in common, namely that scientific language is the most accurate and therefore the most fruitful kind of discourse. And then it follows for the Bible to be true, we must address these scientific questions. I count this assumption inadequate for real life. This is from C. John Collins, who wrote a very good book, and I think it kind of expresses my thoughts on the science versus religion debate and trying to harmonizing current science with the Bible. Because again, remember, every scientific fact comes with an expiration date. In a decade, 100 years, they're going to come up with a different theory that's going to outdate what they think now. Just seems to how it goes. So we're covering Genesis 6 through chapter 9, verse 17 today. There's my bibliography. So this is our objectives today: to understand why the flood happened, to understand the depths of God's love, and understand the power of God's promise. So if you'll join me in a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time to get together to study your word and to learn lessons from what you have left for us, Lord. And just let these lessons resonate in our hearts and go out with us into the world. In your name, amen. All right, so we're going to do a little bit of cleanup from last week. I didn't quite get to go with this. So I don't have this on my slides, but this is Genesis chapter 5, verse 28. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son and called his name Noah, saying, "Out of the ground that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief from our work and from the painful toil of our hands." So Noah's name means rest, and it seems like Lamech, his father, thought he was going to be the promised one from the prophecy back in Genesis 3 about the seed of the woman crushing the serpent's head. So he thought he was going to fix everything. Obviously that didn't happen, but that seems to be what was going through Lamech's mind when he named Noah Rest. So, now after the population of human beings had increased throughout the earth and daughters had been born to them, some divine beings, most translations will say sons of God. It's literally B'nai Elohim. This translation, the ISV, is just wanting to reinforce these are divine beings because ever since about the 2nd century AD, this idea both in Judaism and Christianity is that these were not divine beings. They seem to be going away from this sort of view, especially in Judaism that early on. Like it says in Genesis Rabbah 26, verse 5, that anyone who believes this is cursed in Judaism. Although in the Second Temple, they clung to this belief. They wrote so many books about this belief. But anyway, so some divine beings noticed how attractive human women were, so they took wives for themselves from a selection that pleased them. So the Lord said, "My spirit won't remain with human beings forever because they're mortal. Their lifespans will be 120 years. So the ISV went with the lifespan theory. Other people think this is just how long until the flood will happen, because there are people after the flood that live 120 years, but by the time we get done with Joseph, right, people don't live 120 years any longer in the Bible. So the Nephilim were on the earth at that time, and also immediately after, when these divine beings were having sexual relations with those human women who gave birth to children for them. These children became the heroes and legendary figures of ancient times. So in Genesis 1, when God created species, he said they will reproduce after their own kind. This is one of the violations that's happening here in Genesis 6. These supernatural beings are reproducing with humans. They're not the same kind, right? We're not the same as angels. And so this is a violation of God's order of the world, and it's one of the 3 divine transgressions we see in Genesis 1 through 11 that lead us up to God divorcing the nations. Okay, clicky thing. Oh, there it goes. It's being really slow. So this is the reading of this from the Septuagint. I just highlight this because it does translate sons of God the first time as angels of God. So the Septuagint is making it clear that these are divine beings. And then it translates the second usage of sons of God as sons of God. So The translators of the Septuagint purposely translated B'nai Elohim 2 different ways to really, show that these are divine beings. And Targum Neophiti also is pretty explicit that the Nephilim are sons of angels. So as we see in Judaism before the rabbinical Judaism that came about after the temple's destruction, this was a very common belief for them. So, Nephilim was a very hotly debated term, what it actually meant. It's only used twice in the Old Testament, here and in Numbers 13:33. For many, it comes from the Hebrew root NPL, which meant Nephal, to fall, leading to the translations you'll see in some versions as fallen ones. However, the Septuagint uses gigas, or giant, for Nephilim. And anyways, for a lot of complicated Hebrew grammar reasons, Nephal as the root has never quite worked. And the breakthrough was discovering the Aramaic word for giant is Nephalia, which if you translate that into Hebrew and pluralize it, you get Nephiliim, which is a very close reading. And since Aramaic and Hebrew are cousin languages, you can draw some parallels from that. Both 2 Peter and Jude draw comparisons between false teachers and the sons of God in Genesis 6. Calling both licentious and indulging in defiling lust, 2 Peter 2:2 and verse 10, and also Jude 8. Jude verse 6 tells us the sons of God did not keep their own domain. It's why Paul warns women to wear head coverings in 1 Corinthians 11:10, not to tempt angels. This is why a wife ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels. Because Paul's like, we don't need a repeat of what happened in Genesis 6. So why would Peter and Jude draw this link? We need to look to Babylonian mythology and 1 Enoch 8 to get a better understanding of what Genesis 6 is just giving us the highlights of. So both describe supernatural beings who brought knowledge to mankind as well as taking human women as wives. The knowledge is of Babylonian arts from metallurgy, warfare, psychedelic drugs, and cosmetics and arts of seduction. In the Babylonian versions, these Apkallas are the good guys, while these watchers, as they're called in 1 Enoch, are rebellious angels. In both cases, their actions lead to the flood. For the Babylonians, the gods are jealous of humans for the knowledge that the Apkallas give them. The Apkallas save man by giving them the knowledge of the ark. While in 1 Enoch, Genesis 6, 2 Peter, and Jude, the flood is because of the corruption mankind had grown so rampant because of these demonic ideas that have been influenced us. So how do the Nephilim appear after the flood? If angelic beings who committed these transgressions are kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness, Jude 6, by God, Genesis does not answer the question. We can only speculate. The Jews did a lot of speculation on this. I think my favorite is that they say a Nephilim was clinging to the back of the ark and just sort of hanging on for the entire year of the flood. But, that's just speculation. Yes, Dan?
The Nephilim were the human children of the Elohim, correct?
Yeah, so the Nephilim are the human children, or the half-human, half-divine children, yeah.
The Institute for Creation Research understands that one or more of the wives of the sons of Noah, or perhaps Noah himself, carried this genetic lineage of the big part Nephilim.
That's possible, because we see the first Nephilim after the flood is of the line of Ham. And there is Jewish books written in the Second Temple where Noah or Lamech's wife is saying, no, I didn't sleep with any angels. Noah is your son Lamech. He's not part giant. So the Jews were aware of this problem, and they wrote books to try to give arguments for why it's not true. But yeah, we can only speculate how this happened. So ultimately, the seed of the serpent caused the flood, and I believe is the reason the commands for the Israelites to devote to destruction specific Canaanite clans in the Torah and in Joshua, since these clans seem to have giant's blood in them. We see these sort of, the Rephaim and the Amalekites seem to have quite a lot of this. Yes?
If we find in Job, the book of Job, that Satan is on a chain, he can't do everything, he has to ask for permission to do anything.
I would caution you that Hebrew says Ha-Satan, the Satan, the accuser. That might not actually be Satan. It might be a member of the court that goes to God and accuses people to see if they can be tested. It might be saved, it might not be. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, well, I would think that if some angels came down to earth, that they would have to have the okay with God, and then now you've got men, wickedness and stuff. So,
They were-
I see other scholars think
They were given the okay to come down to earth. We see this in Jacob's ladder. Later in Genesis, angels coming up and down from heaven to do various works.
but I don't see them propagating. Anyway, that's some other scholars.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So, the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every thought of his heart was only evil continually. So, ultimately, it is man that causes the flood, but they seem to have been greatly influenced by the B'nai Elohim and the Nephilim. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. God made us to take care of the earth, and we've instead ruined it. And, God has emotions. He's not happy about this. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. Right? So things have gotten so bad. God has regret. Like I said last week, why didn't God just kill Adam and Eve and start over? Because he has love and compassion, and, he has love and compassion, but now it's got down to the point where there is 8 people, it seems, left on the earth that God thinks are worth preserving. Noah, his 3 sons, and their 4 wives. And we'll get to the Sodom and Gomorrah account, but Abraham bargains God down to if there are just 10 righteous people in Sodom and Gomorrah, he won't destroy the city. And God can't find the 10 righteous people. So we are under the 10 righteous people threshold for the flood. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord, and these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. So Noah is a very righteous man. He's like Job, right? He's blameless. We don't see him doing anything bad until after the flood. So Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violent thought. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. So the word Hamas that's used for filled is sort of the same. It's the same word that's used in Genesis 1:22, where he says to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth. Well, instead of filling the earth with life, we have filled the earth with violence. So that is the parallel that is being drawn back to it. So let's look at a portion of verse from Romans. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed to us. For the creation is eagerly awaiting the revelation of God's children, because the creation has become subject to futility, though not by anything it did. The one who subjected it did so in the certainty that creation itself would also be set free from the corrupting bondage in order to share the glorious freedom of God's children. So the earth is still suffering. The flood didn't fix that. And one day, the earth is going to be renewed, just like we are. And it's because of the revelation that's been given to us. Yes. There it goes. For we know that all the rest of creation has been groaning with the pains of childbirth up to the present time. However, not only the creation, but we who have the first fruits of the Spirit also groan inwardly as we eagerly wait our adoption, the redemption of our bodies. For we were saved with this hope in mind. So it's just something to consider. But now let's go into the flood itself. Anyone know what gopher wood is? In many old translations will say the ark is built out of gopher wood. Anyone ever heard of a gopher tree?
Cypress.
Some do say cypress, yes. Yes, Mom.
I kind of have the bad. Gopher wood is wood that's covered with pitch.
Yes. You see my notes. That's so. So the Hebrew word for gopher wood is gopher. It's just a transliteration because no one knew what this word meant for the longest time. So they just translated it, called it gopher wood. Some modern translations will use cedar or cypress to give it what they think the wood would have been built out of, something fitting for it. But new scholarship on the topic has connected with the more modern Hebrew word gapar. It is from the same root, and it refers to make something watertight with the use of bitumen or pitch. And the biblical word for bitumen, gopret, is used later in this verse. So basically, the wood isn't specified, it's just build an ark and make it watertight with pitch. So that is the mystery of gopher. So Noah is to make an ark. The word is an Egyptian word, teba. It means a coffer or a chest. In fact, it is the same word used for the box Moses' mother puts him in as he floats down the Nile. Noah is to bring 2 of each animal on board, a male and a female, and to stock the ship with provisions. On top of that, he is to bring 7 pairs of the pure animal and birds. I was really confused because it said bring 7 of them and then bring them male and female. I was like, there's this odd number of animals, right? But it's actually 7 pairs and not. So it's actually 14 total animals. So the ark is a rectangle. It's 300 cubits feet or 450 feet by 50 cubits, 75 feet, with a height of 30 cubits and 45 feet. It's to have 3 levels and a gabled roof with a window. It's not a boat, really. It's just a box. Like the word is chest. We like to depict it looking like a boat with a modern keel, but it's really just a box. It's better to float. Like the Babylonian myth has a square, and a square is not a really good thing for stability. So Luke 17, 26 through 27 and verse 30 says, just as it was in Noah's time, so it will be in the days of the Son of Man. People were eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage right up to the day when Noah went into the ark. Then the flood came and destroyed all of them. The day when the Son of Man is revealed will be like that. So this is just a reminder that this is how it's going to be in the last days. Honestly, it's not going to seem all that different from any normal day. People are going to be going about their daily activities. There's not going to be much warning. So just keep that in mind. So God says, for my part, I'm about to flood the earth with water and destroy every living thing that breathes. Everything on earth will die. He promises to protect everyone in the ark. Noah, his wife, who's possibly Naamah, the son of Lamech. That's one of the Jewish names for the wife. There's another one out there. His 3 sons and their wives. Twice Noah acted in accordance with all God ordered him, so Noah is obedient. It takes 7 days to board the ark. Noah is 600 when the upper ocean came as water onto the earth. So remember in Genesis 1, the waters are separated, so you have the water above the earth, and you have the water below, and then the earth rise up. So there's actually water beneath the earth too, right? And all the springs in the great deep broke out. It is the 7th day of the 2nd month when the downpour began. Yahweh himself closes the door of the ark. This is the most date-accurate thing I've ever seen in the Bible, where it's giving specific dates of the month for all these events. It's a very, very interesting passage. It rains for 40 days and 40 nights. The ark floats as even the mountains are submerged by 15 cubits, which is 22 feet above the top of a mountain. Everything that breathed and everything that had lived on dry land died. The flood lasts 150 days. So there's a theory out there that the flood was local, and that maybe it just killed a specific group of humans that were really corrupt. Some take it to the flooding of the Persian Gulf after the end of the Ice Age. It's really hard to square up with that verse, though, where even the mountaintops are covered by water. So God kept in mind, along with all the wildlife and the livestock that were in, I can't speak today, the livestock that were with him in the ark, God's Spirit moved throughout the earth, causing the flood waters to subside. So God is watching over them, right? And he's taking care of them. So Spirit is God's breath, right? And so was God summons the wind to drive back the water for the sake of Noah's family. He's like breathing out on the world. He's like blessing it. So the ark comes to rest on the Ararat Mountains on the 17th day of the 7th month. The water recedes farther until the tops of the mountains are seen on the 1st day of the 10th month. So when I think it says that the ark comes to rest, I think the ark is just floating over where the mountains are, so it's not moving around any longer, because as we see, the mountains don't quite actually appear yet. So after 40 days, Noah sends out first the raven, and then the doves to find out if it was safe to leave. And that's smart, because the raven is a bigger bird. It can fly farther. It's a smart bird too. So that would be the smart one to send out first. And then the dove is a smaller bird. So if it finds land, then land's got to be a lot closer than the raven. Apparently ancient sailors in the Mediterranean would use this idea, to use ravens and doves or birds like that to find out if they were close to land. So when a dove returns with an olive sprig, that's a sign there's something out there that it can build nests. And then when it doesn't return the next time, they know it's getting close to leave. So Noah is 601, and it's the first day of the first month, a new year. It's spring, right? Because the new year in God's calendar starts in the spring. So the earth is recovering. Nearly 2 months later, on the 27th day of the second month, the earth is dry, and Yahweh tells Noah, his family, and the animals it's finally time to board, so they may be fruitful and multiply. He's given the same command again out of Genesis. It is interesting that Mount Ararat in Hebrew is Ararat, which sounds like the Hebrew word for curse, as if the world was cursed and then it was recreated, and now it is being blessed. So, anyone heard of chiastic structures in the Bible? Chiastic structures in the Bible? It's a feature in the Bible. They're really interesting to learn this. So, a chiasm or a chiasmus is a literary device in which a sequence of ideas is presented and then repeated in reverse order. The result is a mirror effect as the ideas are reflected back in a passage. Each idea is connected to its reflection by a repeated word, often in a related form. That's a very simple form of this. The structure of a chiasm is usually expressed through a series of letters. That's just how you break them down. So each letter representing a new idea. For example, the structure A, B, B, A refers to two ideas, A and B repeated in reverse order. Often a chiasm includes another idea in the middle of the repetition. I'm sorry, I cannot speak today. A, B, X, B, A is sometimes how they represent it, or just maybe they would do A, B, C, B, A. In this structure, the two ideas A and B are repeated in reverse order, but the third idea is inserted before the repetition. By virtue of its position, the intersection is emphasized. That's where the author is pointing you towards as the central idea. Genesis is full of this. So many passages in the Bible exhibit chiastic structures. For example, Jesus' words in Mark 2:27 are in the form of a chiasm. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So that is a very simple chiasm. So the word Sabbath and man are repeated in reverse order. Matthew 23:12 is another example. So chiastic patterns in the Bible are just one more example of the richness and complexity of God's inspired word. So this is the chiastic structure of the flood narrative. And this is actually a simplified version. I had to cut down some of it because just to get it to fit on the screen. But as you see, it all points to God remembers Noah in verse 8:1. That is the idea that the flood narrative really wants you to remember. God is thinking about not just Noah, but the animals on board, his family. So this is God, this is why God is doing it. So, but God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark, and God made a wind blow over the earth, and the water subsided. So this verse is the heart of the flood narrative. God remembered not just Noah, but the animals with him, as I said. He used his wind, his spirit, to create a new world for them to live in. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and offered burnt offerings on it from every clean animal and every clean bird. When the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, and that sort of concept of pleasing aroma, it actually comes from the root of Noah's name. I know I wrote it down in my notes, but so Noah means rest, and this sort of pleasing aroma is restful to God, is actually what it says in the Hebrew. It's like ni-hoa is, I believe, the Hebrew word, which I thought I wrote down. So the sacrifices are restful to God, is what the passage is saying. When the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, he told himself, I will never again curse the land because of human beings. Even though human inclinations remain evil from youth, nor will I destroy every living being ever again as I've done. Never again, as long as the earth exists, will sowing and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night ever cease. So he's connecting this to just something you see every day, the rise and fall of the sun. God's not going to destroy the world again until the appointed time. He's going to allow us to continue to exist despite that we're evil from youth. And that's not from infancy to those of the Calvinistic perspective, but from, 12 or 13 or so. So God blessed Noah and his sons and ordered them, be productive, multiply, and fill the earth. So if you ever wonder sometimes why it seems Genesis repeats itself, because God has already told them to be fruitful and multiply just earlier, this is because of the chiastic structure. So it's repeating itself. So all the living creatures of the earth will be filled with fear and terror of you from now on, including all the birds of the sky, everything that crawls on the ground, all the fish of the ocean. They've been assigned to live under your dominion. So this is a repeating of God telling Adam and Eve that you're going to subdue the earth. So we're getting, once again, the Genesis commands being repeated to Noah.
James,
Yeah.
could it be that you have this structure because God never fails to fulfill his promises? Right? Because in Genesis 1:26, for example, he gives man dominion over all his creation. Right? Now he goes and destroys everything. And you have Genesis 8 repeating almost the same dominion that he had given man. Right?
Yeah.
God is consistent with what he does.
Yeah. So God gave mankind dominion. This is what Chris is saying, over the earth, and then it gets ruined. And so God is consistent that we have failed him, and we failed him so badly he doesn't see there's any redemption for the majority of the human race. And so he starts over, and as he sees here, God knows that we're going to continue to be evil, and so he makes a promise this time that he's not going to destroy the earth, even though we're going to continue to ruin it. He's going to do a different plan of redemption this time. So then Noah built... did I repeat my slides? So every living, moving creature will be food for you. Just as I gave you green plants before, so now you have everything. However, you are not to eat meat with its life, that is, its blood in it. So this is where God allows us to eat animals, just not their blood, because blood is life. Yes, Dan?
I think it's worth noting in the New Testament, when the Jerusalem Council meets to finally settle the issue of whether the faith could go out to Gentiles, they gave just 4 rules for the Gentiles to follow. And all of them were rules that flowed from Noah rather than from Moses, including this one here about not eating blood.
Mm-hmm.
That's the origin of the instructions to Gentiles.
We're gonna talk about that here in a moment. So, but yes, so Dan is foreseeing what we're going to be talking about next. But yes, so we're allowed to eat any animal we want, just drain of its blood first, because again, blood is life, and life belongs to God. So we're not allowed to consume the animal's actual life, right? So also, I will certainly demand an accounting regarding bloodshed from every animal and from every human being. I'll demand an accounting from every human being for the life of another human being. Whoever sheds human blood, by human his own blood is to be shed, because God made human beings in his own image. So this is a command that capital punishment is okay. Now as for you, be productive and multiply, spread out over the land and multiply throughout it. So Dan talked about the council saying they went back to Noah for the rules. So this is actually called the Noahide laws, and this is a concept in Judaism for how Gentiles can be right with God. So the Jews didn't think Gentiles were just cast off and God didn't care about them. They just have less things they have to do to be right with God. And so they looked with the commands that were Noah and Adam were given, and they boiled them down to 7 Noahide laws. They're traditionally enumerated as: do not deny God, do not blaspheme God, do not murder, do not engage in incestuous, adulterous, or homosexual relationships, do not steal, do not eat of a live animal, and establish courts and legal systems to ensure law obedience. That would refer back to the verse about the man needs to take care of other men that are killing people. So except for the 7th law, all are negative commands, and the last itself is usually interpreted as commanding the enforcement of others. They are derived exegetically from divine demands addressed to Adam and Noah, the progenitors of all mankind, and thus are regarded as universal. Then Noah said to God and his sons with him, "Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offsprings after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you. As many as came out of the ark, it is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is a sign of the covenant that I will make between me and you, and every creature that is with you for all future generations. And so, we should notice something about this covenant that he's establishing with us. We don't have to do anything for this covenant. Noah is not told that there's any specific thing he has to do to uphold his end of it. This is a one-way covenant that God is making a promise with absolutely zero expectations from us. He's just not going to do this again. He's not going to destroy the world with a flood. I have set my bow in the cloud. And so this is the literal Hebrew word for the weapon of war, the bow. So some translations will just go with rainbow because that's what it's talking about. But it is a bow. It's as if God has set his weapon in the heavens, promising, I'm not going to use this weapon against you ever again. Every time you see heavy rains, and then the sun comes out and you see a rainbow there, that's my promise. Because imagine, like it's generations after the flood, and a massive storm comes in, and you're like, my grandfather was in an ark, right? And he saw the entire world get disrupted. Is this going to happen again? Oh no, there's a rainbow. It's just to reassure us. So, I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. So this covenant, again, is not just with us, it's with the animals. So God is making this promise to the animals that he's not going to do this to them again. So God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. So this is a picture I snapped this morning. I was about to get in my car and I looked up and there was a rainbow over my neighbor's house. So I had to hastily edit my slides this morning, but I just thought that was really neat. It was in front of me for most of the driveway into the church. So, what can the flood story tell us about God? We haven't had much time for discussion, but today we're going to talk about things. Yes?
There is a point where he will no longer put up with righteousness or law breaking or whatever you want to put under that category. There's a line he has drawn, and he's going to draw that line for the next destruction.
Yeah, so Jim's comment is that there is a limit to God's patience with us, that he will eventually just say enough is enough. There's verses in the New Testament that says if you keep hardening your heart, God is just going to give you over to your sins. Right? Dan?
I take it as a given the Nephilim were on the ark, but the evil angels that brought them into existence were not. And so what we see in that God is going to punish the evil, call them angels, call them B'nai Elohim, whatever they were. We get that in the New Testament very clearly. They did wrong, they're going to suffer for it. But the children are not punished. The children that came of those illicit unions are saved. They're on the earth. We know they are because Goliath was one of them. And so we look at that and think, the flood story says the children will not be held guilty, held punished for the sins of the parents. And that's another element of the flood story.
So Dan's comment is going off his theory that there was Nephilim blood in Noah's line, and that God spared some of these children of the combination of the angels and humans coming together as a sign of mercy. But God does sometimes destroy the innocent in punishing the wicked. Remember, God sees far beyond this world, so the end of any one life isn't the end of their existence.
Absolutely, justice will happen in the world to come.
Yeah, but your point is that again, just like justice will happen in the next world if it doesn't happen in this world.
The story also talks about faith, and we see that Noah was saved not because of a whole bunch of things he did, but just by the act of faith that he had. And that's the same kind of faith that we see in Abraham. And so we can look at this story and say that's what God wants from us. He wants the faith that we have in him and to move forward. He didn't say that Noah never did wrong, et cetera. It just said he had this faith.
Yes, it's true. Noah did have faith. There's a whole verse in the New Testament, or a passage in the New Testament that talks about it, which, is on my slides. So we will cover that quite here at the end. But any other comments? Yeah.
I'm not sure I completely understood what Keith said, because faith without deeds is dead.
He built an ark.
And he built an ark.
So
Yeah.
there you go. He had works. He took 100 years to build an ark with copper tools, probably at best, with just him and his 3 boys. And that's the size, it's bigger than a football field, right? That's a task, yeah.
Tubal-Cain was also able to do iron before the flood, so they might have had iron, but the wood, according to Frank Navarro's book, was oak. And if you imagine making anything that big out of oak, even with iron, that's a tremendous amount of trust in the being that has told you to do that.
Okay, yeah. If it is iron, it's probably meteorite iron, which is, you don't need to refine, because it takes a lot of technology to be able to refine iron out of ore. So before they had like furnaces that powerful, they would just use meteoric iron. So that's why. So you ever see in mythology that like fairies are afraid of iron, and they sometimes call it cold iron? What they actually mean is meteorite iron. So it seemed to have like supernatural properties to people. It falls from the sky, and then you can make a sword out of it. You can understand why people would think that. But yeah, either way, it's a task, yeah.
So this is a good question about faith and action. We see in this example, think of the faith that Noah had to have to start building this thing for years and years and years, when everybody around is continuing life and he's there doing something. I mean, yes, it's acts, but the act is based on the faith that he had in God, and that God came in. And we need both, obviously, but the example I was saying is it's this faith that then turns into action that we're all to have.
Yeah.
Examples for all of us to have.
So Keith is talking about how faith is supposed to be put into action, and Noah did that. I mean, it's often portrayed as Noah's neighbors like laughing at him. You're so dumb. Why are you building a giant boat in the middle of probably nowhere near a body of water big enough for it to float on? That's generally the image you conjure out of it. Yes, Dan.
I really appreciated your bringing out the role of the animals. God has made a covenant with the animals. He's also given them commands. And you don't give a command to an inanimate object. He's given these animals commands to follow, and he's put in place punishment if they don't. If
Yeah.
the animal it kills a human, the animal is to be killed. It's a very interesting relationship between God and animals in the flood.
Yeah. So Dan pointed out that God gives commands to animals, implying that they are animate. They have souls. They're soulless creatures, right? That is what the Bible teaches about animals. And we see that with the sort of animals that Genesis is talking about. It's not necessarily insects, but mammals and birds and even reptiles, to the extent that you can form emotional bonds with them, and that God has given them commands not to harm humans because He put humans in authority over them. So that's like an animal who attacks a human is like you attacking your king. That's just a big no-no. And an animal that does that, it changes them. They're going to want to, if they get away with it, they're going to do it again and again. So, yeah. Any other comments or questions or about anything we talked about today? Yeah.
I found it interesting that he designated
Well, that gets more into critical text stuff, into like the documentary hypothesis, where they would say that that's document P that was inserted in by whoever redacted Genesis. I would say that's probably Moses adding just a little thing there, because they do mention that they sacrifice animals. So it would make sense that Noah brought extra of those animals that he plans on sacrificing to God, because, well, I only brought 2 cows and now I sacrificed them both. So I think that's why that Moses points out that they had extra animals for sacrifice, because they do give sacrifice to God.
And it is important that we understand a whole lot more happened in those 16 centuries than what is written down here in 10 pages.
Yes, we are
God
getting
talked to us a lot.
we are getting a condensed version of history told succinctly for theological points. Because I think, like what John said about Jesus, we told all his stories. There's not enough books on earth. That would be an accomplishment, yeah. Any other last comments? All right. So just some final thoughts. So 1 Peter 3:18-22. For the Messiah also suffered for sins once for all, an innocent person for the guilty, so that he could bring you to God. He was put to death in a mortal body, but was brought to life by the Spirit, in which he went and made a proclamation to those imprisoned spirits who disobeyed long ago in the days of Noah, when God waited patiently while the ark was being built. In it, a few, that is, 8 persons, were saved by water. Baptism, which is symbolized by that water, now saves you also, not by removing the dirt from the body, but by asking God for a clear conscience based on the resurrection of Jesus the Messiah, who has gone to heaven and is at the right hand of God, where angels, authorities, and powers have been made subject to him. So, let's just end in a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time to study your word, and thank you for being able to share and have this discussion with my brothers and sisters in Christ, Lord, and just let these words resonate in our hearts and go out with us into the world, Lord. And in your name, amen.